Hello and welcome to the Winners of the Find a Way show. I am your host, CEO Trent Clark. I am a serial entrepreneur, the author of Leading Winning Teams, obviously the host of Winners Find a Way here on the podcast. Most people know me, however, because besides being a growth coach, first, I was an MLB three-time World Series coach. So today on the show, I welcome my good friend, MC Laubscher. What's up, buddy?
Great to be here, and thank you for having me on. And I've been looking forward to our conversation, Trent.
Me too, MC. Me too, man. Like, when you put an MC on the phone, man, like, you got like Hammer, you got like a lot of, stuff that you got to live up to. Like, you may have to host the thing if you're the MC. So
Yep,
you get a lot of that every time they talk about that initial.
absolutely. And I always say, my mom was way ahead of all of us with the
Yeah.
MC. MC Hammer and the pants came afterwards. So
Yeah,
she
I love it.
she jumped just a little bit ahead of the MC Hammer.
I love it. That's awesome. So as you can hear, MC's got a little accent right there, pretty Americanized, but I'll tell you, MC's a South African born, went to school, a very, very, very high level rugby player, came over to play pro rugby in the United States, met a young lady, got married, settled in, and even had a chance to play for the U.S. team involved with the World Cup in the national team. Fair?
Yeah, I was part of their squad. I got hurt just before the trip, but there was a lot of lessons in that too, right? When it comes to life, leadership, and next chapters.
Yeah, that's so good. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Born in Cape Town, now in Newtown, PA. So let's talk a little bit about Newtown, PA, about halfway between Philadelphia and the Big Apple, kind of rural, MC. So you got your choice. You can go north, you can go south, and go check out the big city, or you can stay a little bit in the country. Is that fair?
That's right. I love it. It was a small town. It's grown quite a bit since I've been
Yeah.
here, but lots of Amish farmers markets, farms, great communities. So just love this area. Plus, you're pretty close to everything. Like I said, hour 45 minutes to New York, hour and 30 depending on traffic to Philly. You could even hit the Jersey Shore from here in about
Yeah.
an hour and a half. So depending on
Yeah.
traffic. So it's a good spot.
I see that more and more. I remember back in '09, I remember everybody talking about 2009. You know what? Nobody could live rural. We're going to need mass transit. Everyone has to be in a city, and then of course 2020 hits, it's a pandemic. Everyone goes working remote. And it's like, man, I want to live out near fresh food. I want to smell, the land. I want to be near trees. I want to have space. And you see these towns that have really raised up, and it's fun to see. It's probably a little bit of a strain stress on some of the small villagers. Like, I like it when we were 1,500. Now you're 15,000.
It's interesting. I have friends here that they work in New York City, in on Wall Street, and they actually, I mean, they live here, so it's 30 minutes to get to a train station, and on the train, an hour gets them, downtown New York. So it's wild how people have migrated into certain areas. I think it was a wake up call for a lot of people of what's important, right? What they actually wanted and where they actually wanted to live. And the city's great when you're young. When you get a little bit older and you have a family, the burbs is always a place. But I think that has even sped up where you have a lot of young people now too, just out in rural towns and out in the suburbs.
Interestingly, I grew up in Southwest Michigan, very close to Amish country of northern Indiana. And,
Mm.
listen, these folks, were strange and, they did things awkward. Now everyone's going, wait a minute, they're living right, like growing their own food, like doing the thing, like, getting to church. And it's like, wait a minute, man, like there's some things that are like really great about these communities. And obviously, people have been shopping in the communities for fresh foods and jams and canning and all the things that have happened in those. And furniture, of course, is
Yep.
massive up in our area, and great builders. And so, it's interesting how we're kind of getting back to those roots, right? That little house on the prairie feel. Like we're kind of going back to like what's important: family, health, being outside, enjoying it, get away from all the tech. And it just seems like it really matters.
You know what's interesting? When I grew up in South Africa, I grew up during a very interesting part of the country's history. So as a young man, it went from the apartheid regime. I remember when Nelson Mandela was released. Then they had elections like 3 years later. We had a completely new president and government and form of government and that kind of stuff. And during that time period, there was a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen the next day. You can't think of in terms of 6 months, 12 months. Where am I in 5 years? Because you can't even see tomorrow. You have no idea what's going on. And of course, with that unknown and that uncertainty, that drives like crazy behavior, the madness of crowds. We're all familiar with that, right? But the one thing that I found interesting to tie into what you just mentioned with the Amish especially, the one thing that I remember seeing too is how tribal people got, and in this instance, bringing it back to 2020, it's people that have the same values, the same principles, the same mindset. They see the world the same. They have the same beliefs, right? And they became a tribe. So that's why the pockets of movements is people moved where other people like they are. So it's interesting to see it just in a little bit different, because obviously South Africa is very unique, where you have so many different tribes. You could even argue, I mean, it's way over 20 if you really want to get technical. But people got very, very tribal when things are unclear and there's uncertainty and there's challenges, which we still have today. So I see it happening more and more.
Yeah, no, I see the same. And, I think it's been going on a while. I mean, when I look at I lived in Chicago for years, and everyone talked about Chicago being a great melting pot. And that really was true. There's a lot of diversity, except to your tribal point, we had Chinatown, where a lot of the Asian, communities settled in, especially the Chinese, obviously. And then we had Italian Village, which was 80% Italian, and then you had the Polish Village, which is 90% Polish. That you just keep going, right?
Ukrainian Village is a neighborhood too. Right?
Yep, exactly. Yep. So I mean, when you sit there and you go like, well, we're kind of in this together, except we're tribal. We go to where our people are. They speak our language. They understand our values. They understand our culture, and there's some merit to that, right? Like we like what we like, and the things we understand. But you understand, MC, and what we really want to talk about today is man, you have been advising high-end wealth business owners in particular for a long time. Family offices, written two of the books. I thought the 21 best cash flow niches and Get Wealthy for Sure. So I love those two books. A couple of the things that you've coined around this thing, Cashflow Ninja, an absolute proponent of financial freedom, and definitely want to talk about one of your concepts here, infinite banking. So let's talk first about the books, what inspired you there, and how are those books being used today in your world, and where can people pick them up?
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so when I came to the United States in 2001, I had a couple of $100, backpack, suitcase, sense of humor, sense of adventure, and playing in a sports league here, as you mentioned, the rugby. I had no idea where I was going to end up 25 years later. But what happened, as you travel with sports teams, guys get into all kinds of stuff. It's video games, it's magazines, it's card games, it's all this stuff. I was the guy from time to time that were reading books about business and investing, because I thought, I got a pretty good opportunity here traveling with sports. Like, I should not squander this. I gotta pick up some skills in the meantime, right? And knowledge. So I came across Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki that my mom gave to me. I read that book, and within 6 months, I bought my first investment property. I threw in some tenants there, collected the rents, paid all the bills, and there was cash flow left at the end of the month. And I'm like, how many times can I do this? This is wild. Just like in the book. This is crazy. But of course, then school starts. But it was a great experience to, build a business and build a real estate business. So money that I was generating from sports and other odd jobs, I was just using that to buy real estate. I through the network, and rugby is like a fraternity. It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood now around the world. I met someone that we actually were introduced because they said, "Hey, well, he's in real estate. You like real estate. You guys should talk." And he was older than me at that point and experienced. And he's like, "So you like real estate?" I said, "Yeah, I just bought a property." He's like, "Oh, wait a second. So you actually took action." So we started to chat, and it turns out that he came from a family on the north side of the city of Chicago, where I lived in Chicago too. So that's why when you mentioned I lived in Chicago, it's great. I live there too. That's where I met him. But his family was one of these legacy families, these family office families. And I didn't realize that at that point, right? I just, in Rich Dad Poor Dad too, in the book, they said the rich don't work for money, they work to learn. So I'm like, if you had any odd jobs when I'm in town, I'd be happy to jump in. He's like, anytime, jump in. I didn't realize that there were some of the biggest investors in real estate on the north side of the city. And they had this legacy business in their family for 3 generations. And what I learned from him through lunches and, just working with him in his business is they generated all their cash from their operating businesses. They put it in a family bank. And created a banking system around their family. And then they would leverage this banking system to go and buy more real estate. And they would just do it over and over and over. And it's funny how the world works. The one concept from Rich Dad Poor Dad is cash flow. I read that book, by the way, every single year. It would be the 25th year that I read it.
Awesome.
When the student is ready, the teacher appears. Sometimes, people talk about reading a ton of books. I often say if you have 10 good ones that you read over and over and can implement and execute, it's almost better. But I picked up in the book that all the liabilities on that simplified financial statement that's in the book is someone else's asset. And I'm like, whose is this? Because this entity has this figured out, and it's the banks. And then, it's funny how it all came together. He shared with me they have this family banking set up. I had this light bulb moment reading Rich Dad Poor Dad again. And then I came across the work of Nelson Nash that wrote the book, Becoming Your Own Banker. And in the book, he also shared, look, when you deposit your money in a bank, whether you save it or you spend it, or whether you borrow money from that same bank to spend or invest, your bank makes money in every single transaction. He's like, you should be doing that. You should mimic exactly what they're doing. And that's where the strategy of infinite banking came in. And he also in that book shared, like, look, you have to be in 2 businesses, regardless of what you do in life. Whether you have a company with a physical product, a service, an information product, it doesn't matter. You're in the business that you're in, and you need to be in the banking business. So I took those principles that I learned from my friend and, from Nelson Nash, and I started to implement that in my real estate business and the other stuff that I was doing. And I started to see massive, massive changes because this was the one strategy that I'm like, oh, my money's guaranteed to grow, tax-free. I can access it at any given point in time. I have control over my capital at all times, and I don't have to run to the bank or use credit cards, which a lot of business owners have to fall back on if they don't manage cash flow properly. And then I started to teach this. I'm one of those guys that I learn, do, teach, right? So I like to learn stuff, implement it, do it myself, and then teach others. And I started to realize that there was a massive opportunity. So that's where Producer's Wealth came from. And the book, Get Wealthy for Sure, the #1 financial strategy for business owners to multiply wealth predictably, shares this exact strategy. And by the way, this strategy has been used by families in the United States for 170 years. And it's worked for them. So when I phrase the book, or the title of the book, Get Wealthy for Sure, trust me, I got some eye rolls, right? Everybody's like, okay, all right, let's settle down. But I'm like, look, you got a track record of 170 years, so that's a pretty good run. So that's where that book came from. And in Producer's Wealth, my company, I started in 2015. We help business owners and investors all across the United States implement and execute that. When I started that, I'm sure you've had the exact same experience. that you have incredible conversations with people, because it's like how people make money and how they invest it. It's incredible. I mean, there's so many different ways to do it. And I had these conversations that just would blow my mind. And at that stage, I thought, well, I need to start recording this. And so I did. And that's where Cashflow Ninja came from. My dad is also a famous martial artist, and his philosophy with martial art is always to pursue excellence in his craft daily. You never arrive in excellence. You're always pursuing it. So I took that philosophy to Cashflow Ninja, the podcast, and just trying to get better every day as a business owner and investor, interviewing the best minds of business and investing. And in the book, The 21 Best Cashflow Niches, I shared some of the most interesting ways to generate cash flow and manage cash flow on the show. But yeah, it's kind of, so that's what I'm up to today too. And that, that's the two books that have gotten a lot of traction out there, which has been pretty cool and exciting.
Yeah. So for people that are on a walk down this infinite banking, is a walk in get wealthy for sure. It sounds like that's the narrative, right? And like I said, I love, as an entrepreneur, we are constant. I'm an entrepreneur organization member, do a lot with EO, do a lot with YPO, Vistage. And as I look at those folks, they are always looking for the next hack to be more efficient, better, less risk. I think it's funny, man, when you talk about entrepreneurs, like, oh, they're just risk averse. They'll do what, like they are not willing to take crazy risks. Like, they take very calculated risks. And so as you talk about this is another risk they get to shore up against themselves, which is a really big deal. So let's talk a little bit about that before we get into the insurance side of this, which is big. Let's talk about how, everyone, the folks that are in that top 3%, right? They really understand calculated risk. They really understand that. No one's going in ready, fire, aim, right? Like, everyone's getting ready. They're aiming at what they're going to do, and then they're firing. Like, there's been a couple times, like, hey, first in the market has worked. We've seen those tragic stories where that fire before ready and aim has, like, taken off like a rocket ship, only to come out of the sky and even faster on the way down, right? So we've seen that when it hasn't been calculated and planned. Walk us through a little bit of that, what you've seen there.
Yeah, it's interesting. To your point, you could be ready, fire, and aim sometimes and have an incredible idea, an incredible product, and you could be bankrupt in 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
And people are like, I don't understand. How's that possible? And it all comes down to the finance side of it. Because as entrepreneurs, we're geared to, like, we get excited. We talk everybody around us ears off about this exciting solution that we have to a problem, or this product or service that's going to get a desired outcome for someone, right? And we go all in on that, and we are, that's our craft right there. But the missing piece is the finance piece, and that really makes or break people, especially when you come to managing cash flow. So the biggest mistake that I see, with business owners, and this could be, I mean, I could give you examples of different journeys on the journey, right? Let's go with a startup and start there. So when you start as a business owner and you go all in, all of the resources, time, energy, everything is into what you're doing. Unless you come from a wealthy family, which that's not a problem at all. But for most of us, we're all in. We have to be. And it's long days, long hours. It's blood, sweat, and tears. You're all in. And after a while, your first breakthrough is you're not going broke. This thing actually works. That's the first one. And you're like, whew, all right, another failed idea. Trust me, I've got several of those too. So if you're listening to this and you're an entrepreneur, you could probably relate. So it breathes, and now it grows, and it starts to grow. Now, from a financial standpoint, at that point, you look like a broke person on a financial statement because you're all in. Like you're all into your business. Everything
Yeah.
is tied there. So you are no one's ideal client, no advisor's ideal client at that stage. So the advice that you're getting, you're not going to get good advice at that stage unless you've got a powerful network. And then you start to grow, the business starts to be profitable, and now you're off to the races. And at that stage, you would have advisors come in and say, hey, you're doing a great job, the business is growing, let's take some money outside of this business and diversify. And what happens at this point, and this is why the world of finance and entrepreneurship, business owners and investors are always at, kind of like bumping heads, because at that stage, what they're going to advise you to do is, number one, give up control of your capital. Number two, give it to them. Number three, to invest stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and ETFs, which is other people's businesses. Other people's businesses. So you've taken the money out of your business, and now it's working in someone else's business. I love Tim Cook. I love Apple. I've got Apple products. Apple doesn't need my money to grow. My own business does. That's the first mistake. The second mistake then, and it kind of like dovetails, is because of this, now you lost control of capital. You still have to manage cash flow for 12 months, or the 4 seasons of cash flow, as I talk about. The 4 seasons of cash flow is summer, highest revenue month. Everybody's got them. You got like 2 or 3 months that your business is crushing it. Every year, it's predictable. The opposite of that is the winter, and that's your lowest revenue month. Now, in summer, pretty easy to run a business when you just got money coming in and revenue is very, very high. In the winter, very, very tough to manage your business because you don't have that money coming in, and you have the same overheads. And through the seasons, if you're at the peak of summer, things start to slow down. You go into the fall, it starts to slow even more down, and then it goes into the winter. Now, in the winter, again, this is when you need access to capital most to manage the business. But there's another element. You need money to run a new marketing campaign, launch a new product, bring in technology like AI. You hire employees, whatever you need it for, because that will get you from winter to the spring to back into the summer next year. So you need capital and access to it during the 4 seasons. But because you've lost control of it and it's operating someone else's business, what do? You're beholden to the banks and other third parties constantly. So what we teach and come in at that stage is like, hey, there's a better way to do this and structure your finances better, where you could still diversify outside of your business a little bit. Let's have a vehicle outside of your business, and instead of losing control of the capital, put it in that vehicle, which could be a family bank. You still maintain control over that capital, but now if you need access to capital, you have it because it's in your family bank. The family bank loans it back to the business. The business can manage cash flow throughout the rest of the year. It can invest back into the business to get out of that winter cash flow season into the spring, into the summer. And it's also it becomes a mechanism to then later diversify in other areas. We've had a client that used their family bank to access capital to buy the real estate from which the business operates. So now they're diversified 3 ways. They're in their business, number one. They've got a family bank capital, which they're building up through this banking system that you've created, and it's outside of your business. So you're diversified there, but yet didn't give up control. And you now have real estate from which your business could be the anchor tenant with 3 other tenants in it. So it's just a little bit more control. And again, then you get to the massive growth phase, right? And you're going to need external capital at that point. But you have a system, so you're going into negotiations and you bring on other partners and have access to other funds and capital, whether it be investors, third parties, but you're in a position of strength. You're not in a position of weakness where you get bullied because they know that you're desperate and be like, well, you're really not going to grow your business if you don't have us. So you get into contracts and partnerships, which is not the best way to structure it for you. But those are some of the things that we see constantly. And it's, you know, it's just efficiency. And this is the one secret that I've learned in family offices. And this is where families, they have $100 million net worth and up. This is their private wealth management kind of companies, which focuses on the wealth of the family. The number one secret is efficiency. You know, we all think of the sexy stuff, the sexy cocktail party conversations. Hey, I put $100 into this and now I have 100,000, you know, those kind of deals. But that's not what they're focusing on. They're focusing on, number one, not losing money. Number two, maintaining control, and then predictably growing it, but being efficient. You know, think about it this way, and I learned this from an advisor in a family office. He said, MC, if we save this family 20% in taxes this year, there's no return in the marketplace that could match that, number one, and compound that over 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years like these families think. I mean, this is now millions upon millions of dollars just from fine tuning, instead of looking for the next doggy coin or, you know, the next hot VC startup and that kind of stuff. So that's a big part of, you know, just the efficiency and kind of where we come in and kind of like, you know, look at what you can fine tune.
Yeah, you really see this, and I love this. Two things here kind of come to mind is that, you know, I tell a lot of people when they make that savings and change that process for the better, get more efficient, that's in perpetuity. That's just not a one-time fine. This is 7%, which is 7% again next year, which may turn into 15, 18, 30% down the road because it just keeps getting better into the process. The other side of this is you talked about, you kind of used the startup example. You know, people are staggered by how many times growth kills companies, because all of a sudden it's like, whew, here goes the hockey stick, and we're not positioned for it. Like, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I need more supplies. I'm writing checks that I don't really have the money for to get product to create my widget, right? And I'm trying to get raw materials, and meanwhile I can't sell it fast enough. I can't get paid fast enough. There's an AP issue, and all of a sudden there's a break in the sales chain, and it's like, wait a minute, man, you're going to be in winter all the time. And how long can you survive it on your own? And oftentimes they can't, and they don't have this kind of vehicle in place. They're not positioned for it. Is that fair?
Absolutely. It's the business owner's dilemma between the receivables and the payables. And, you know, a lot of people would say, well, you know, I've got an info product, or it's online, or it's a service. I can tell you, you know, whether it's a physical product or a service that you deliver, it's the same thing if it's not structured correctly. Your example of the widget is perfect, because if you're building widgets, you got to get raw materials shipped to you. Then you got to manufacture the widgets. Then you got to package it. You got to store and warehouse it, and you got to ship it. And at the same time, as you could be selling that like hotcakes, but on the back end, you need more raw materials, more manufacturing, more packaging. I mean, it's just, and you get caught between the payables and receivables. And you, like you said, eventually you're writing checks that cross in the mail, and you're just hoping that it clears. And it's the same thing with a service. You know, like we have a service business too. So sometimes you're like, well, I got to bring on more staff, and then I got to bring on more technology and software and all these things for the business to grow. But at the same time, then you know, your clients might be coming at the same pace and not scaling as the amount of the back end that you're building out, right? So it's the exact same thing. So the one thing that's going to change everything for the business owner is solving that business owner dilemma, which is the cash flow management. You know, and when we think cash flow, we think yields, right? We just think, like you mentioned, we think yields. What about the yield inside of your business from just that efficiency and fixing that one thing that keeps people up at night? I mean, the conversations that I have, that is the number one thing that keeps business owners up constantly. So there is a solution for that. It's not a quick fix. You know, this is where I say caution. When anything is a quick fix, when you're trying to lose weight with a pill or an injection, it's probably not sustainable. It's the same thing with finance. There's no quick fix. It's going to be 6 months to 12 months to 18 months. but it's going to involve a lot of discipline will have to be involved. And it's not something you sit and forget. It's something that you maintain, you manage, you keep implementing, executing with discipline, but it's going to make a massive difference in your business.
Yeah, I think, just going through running down your list there, I mean, this is a hard thing for people to understand. How much is outgoing just to get that product finally at fulfillment, right? Like I
Right.
paid all the labor, I paid all the raw materials, I paid all the storage, I paid the rent, of course, and of course, packaging, everything else just keeps adding up. And you're thinking like, hey man, how long is my sales cycle? Because if I don't
Right.
get paid on this thing pretty soon, I'm out, $100,000 on this last batch, and I know I've got $150,000 in sales, but can I make it another 90 days till that 150 comes? Like, maybe not. It's like, and I think I have lived this. I have lived this. Checks in the mail, like, man, I sure hope I get paid. I sure hope that check's in the mailbox when I get back to the office. And it's no way to live, man. I mean, it is rough action, and you're always playing a little I call it mailbox roulette, right? Like, it's like, is it going to be there or isn't it, man? Because if it's not, I'm going to get shot again here in the foot, and I'm going to be creating some environment, and we're back to that old adage, right? Robbing Peter to pay Paul. What am I not going to do? BD costs, marketing costs. What am I going to steal from in order to make sure that we get to the next day, to the next week? What are we going to do? And man, that game is like spinning plates.
And then just when you cannot afford it, you have your supplier coming to you and say, hey, we got to shorten the cycle. We can't get paid every 90 days. We got to get paid in 60 or 30, and they want to change terms on you as you're waiting, 60 to 90 days of getting paid on the other side, right? So yeah, and of course with physical stuff, and I mean service is the same. They have different issues, but you have deliveries that are late. A truck, falls over on the side of the road. Like there are some interesting stories that I have, but those things happen too.
And MC, this is where I think a lot of people do not understand how, hey, you had a $4 million company. How can you walk away from it? And you're like, listen, when you talk about the stress we just described of that going, and now we have a big uncertainty of tariffs, right? Everyone's like, oh, tariff this, tariff that. Oh man, where will I find another 12 points if I got to pay on that product? I don't have the 12 points in the first place. Like, how much can I charge? And we're seeing all these things. Everything's got to be revamped. We're in what I call right now uncertainty overload, right?
Yes.
So the entrepreneurs are the people who can usually resolve these things, and because uncertainty creates opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
So now it's a matter of fatigue kind of makes cowards of us all. And a lot of people have got like entrepreneurial fatigue at this point. It's been a lot of years of uncertainty with, just think from 09. From 09 on. I mean, it's just been, since the financial crisis, it feels like a roller coaster, at Six Flags that we've been on, going, man, heck of a ride. But like, I think I just want to go home and rest and, sit by the fire and relax, because this ride's been taxing. And I don't know if I want to stay at the amusement park. It's been a little crazy.
It is. And, the other thing is too, that since I would say that the great financial crisis, when you started to see like a recovery in real estate a little bit, that took up until like 2011, 2012. And then a lot of people got back in, and it's been a pretty good ride in real estate and, access to capital and so forth. But now you hit the nail on the head. You're in uncertain territory since 2020. It's just been, I feel like, we're in a crazy world where every month something's happening, whether it's local, whether it's nationally in the US, or whether it's internationally, geopolitical, that affects us directly now on the ground. So you have all of these uncertainty, and that's why, the one thing that you need is you have to have some level of foundation, something that is certain in a world that of uncertainty, something that you can count on and back on, and one of the things that we talk about quite a bit is, look, besides you, which is the asset in the in the business, right? And your employees, your skill set, your mindset, your unique ability, your relationships, and so forth. Besides that, and that of your employees, you got to have something else in place. And when you have a financial strategy that provides some clarity and some level of stability, even in a crazy world, that's going to give you a competitive edge. It's
Yeah.
going to give you a competitive edge, because I can tell you this: your competitors don't. They don't have that clarity. They don't have any certainty whatsoever, and they're just watching news headlines and living through anxiety every single day.
Well, here's my other factor for this, MC, is that most business owners, engineers, innovators, salespeople, an expert in some service, a professional service and expertise, but I don't see CFOs starting companies. I don't see financial managers starting companies. So when I get into a company as their growth coach, what's usually one of the strongest weaknesses? Their financials. They're like, yeah, I don't want to look at it. I don't know. I think we got more money. We got more money in the bank than I owe. So I think we're okay. Like, it's like, wait, what? Like, hold on. Like, have we talked about a balance sheet? Have we talked about this? And they're like, I don't know if I really want to talk about it. I don't always understand it. It's confusing. What I do understand is that, hey, I did $10 million in revenue and I only had 8.5 in expenses. So I understand that. But complexity in it, right? And we're trying to kind of get this into a KISS principle, kind of trying to dumb it down, but that's not easy. And this is not where most people feel comfortable. Guys like me, I've started 14 companies. I have a teaching degree. I'm an educator. This is what I'm like you, MC. I like to coach. I like to teach. And I tell people all the time, hey, listen, I'll know you know it when you can teach it. Then you can tell me that you understand it, because you'll start coaching other people, right? And so talk to about these owners out there who feel this fiscal uncertainty, feel this, hey, I know about 10% of the information of probably what I need to know as a business owner. So I hire somebody, right? I hire somebody and hopefully they know, right, MC? Hopefully they get it. But what would you tell them right now? Because this is part of the big uncertainty. Is there certainty in the infinite banking product?
Yeah, so I would tell business owners that the most important thing, just like in sports, is your defense are going to win your championships. Yeah. Offense is going to win you games. And yes, you need some, using the baseball net, you need some bats on balls and you need some hits, but your defense is going to make or break you. So the first thing for them to think about is, do I have all of my defensive structure set up? Do I have my reserves? Do I have a strategy where I have control over my capital? They should be able to answer this question. What happens to my business and my family if something should happen to me? Like, if I had to pass away, what happens?
Bus theory, like just walk across a curb and it's over. Right
there you go. And if you have partners, let's just say you have another partner or three partners, what happens if one of the partners passes away? And what happens to their family? So those are contingency and succession strategies that you got to think about. So you got to have that in place. When it comes to
how many times, stop there for a second. How many times have you seen this, right? Where it's like, oh, well, our operating agreement doesn't really specify. So now you have a significant other, male or female, doesn't matter, who's not really knowledgeable about the business at all. Like, oh, I teach kindergarten. Oh, I'm a lawyer over at this place. Or, hey, I'm a homemaker. I haven't had to do this. Like, I've been taking care of things at home, and either he or she's out there working, whatever. And so now all of a sudden they're the third partner with equal voting right. And you're like, wait a minute, this structure could be a challenge, right? Like, how many times do you see those things just go out of control and in a hurry?
All the time. We've seen it in 10 years. I've seen from real estate investors with 20 million plus real estate portfolios, and the spouse has no interest in the business, and there was no planning done. Businesses, it's again the surviving spouse, no interest whatsoever. So what do? And the partners don't have the capital to buy her out, or him. So now everybody's looking at each other, staring at each other and go, well, this is a problem because
Yeah.
so buy sells are very common in business. How do you facilitate it? How do you provide enough liquidity in a worst case scenario for those buy sells? And then what's the contingency plan for besides the business for the family? Because again, what does the family look like? If one of the owners, if there was no planning done and no liquidity, and everything was tied up in the business, and then the business owner dies, there's no liquidity for the family, and that business fed the family and provided everything, right? So we see that all the time. And that's why, that some of the strategies first is defense. And then you asked about infinite banking. So infinite banking also is just basically you use life insurance contracts. And life insurance, I know, is like a 4-letter word for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And for a very good reason, because there's all the stigma, all the jokes, all the fun that's poked at life insurance people in movies is very well deserved. But if you look at it from a big picture perspective, in the world of the ultra affluent and ultra wealthy, life insurance is an asset class, just like real estate. That's how they look at it in family offices, because it's not just while you're alive. The life insurance that we use in infinite banking is a very specifically designed policy for living benefits. So of your premiums, 70 to 80% of your premiums go straight towards the cash, the savings of the policy. So you have a death benefit and you have savings in there. And then, of course, the money is guaranteed never to go down, guaranteed to grow tax-free. You're setting it up with mutual life insurance carriers. So you get dividends, which is around 6% right now, which is profit sharing in the company. These companies have been around for 170 years. They've paid dividends every single year consecutively for 170 years. And then you have guaranteed access to that money. So number one, yes, you're protected because there's a death benefit there. So if something happens to you, there is a death benefit. But the primary objective is to put it into a vehicle for savings so that while you're alive. So that's where the banking part comes in, as you position money in this very specifically structured policy. And then to access it, and not to get too technical, you access it through policy loans. It would be the same thing as having, I had a mentor back in the 70s that would put $100,000 in a CD in a bank account. Getting 10%, by the way, at that stage, compounding every year. He would go to that same bank and say, Mr. Banker or Mrs. Banker, can I get a loan secured by that $100,000 in my CD? And the bank would say, yeah, that's fine. Because of the collateral, we have your money. We'll give it to you at 9% or even 8%. So he has his money growing in that CD, 100,000 uninterrupted at 10. And then he can use 90% of that or 95% of that. Let's just say 95K, which he's borrowing at 8% to go buy real estate or grow his business and then repay the loan. His money is working in two places simultaneously. You're doing the exact same thing here with infinite banking with a life insurance policy. So the money inside of the policy never, ever gets interrupted. It's just uninterrupted compounding, tax-free at 6%. You're borrowing at around 5% to feed your business, fuel it, manage cash flow, and then also later on use it for, funding other assets. And when you get to kind of the next level stuff, and this is where the Rockefeller strategy comes in, as they call it. This is what the Rockefellers do in their family office, is that you have a family bank with these life insurance policies on all your family members. We have 12 of these policies in our family, but this family bank then becomes the lender to your business. So when Producers Wealth, my own business, because I like to eat my own cooking and practice what I preach, when we need funding, we go to the Laubscher family bank. The Laubscher family bank gets us a line of credit, a loan, and then we repay the Laubscher family bank. And in that case, just as I mentioned earlier, where you deposit money to save, to spend, or where you loan money from your bank to spend or invest, the bank makes the money. In this case, it's just your family bank. You've just now replaced the banking function. And that's what infinite banking is. So it is the foundational stuff of that, what you should have in place defensively as a business owner, because once you have this in place, now you can swing for the fences. because you have access to money guaranteed. You have money that's growing tax-free. You can access it tax-free at any time to grow your business, hire employees, and so forth. So now you could really swing for the fences. So it could be a secret weapon for a business owner.
Well, and you've used this primarily for real estate, which is also collateral for the loan, right? You have a physical product against that, which is that a challenge when a professional service is going to put up a client list or something like that against it?
No. So, yes, I started with real estate, and now we use it obviously for funding everything. That's where I started like 2 decades ago. But I can tell you this, life insurance, again, if you look at it through the lenses of the family office style world and how this is set up, banks, by the way, if you have to get a line from a bank, love this stuff. They actually have products called LILOCs, life insurance line of credit, and a HELOC, home equity line of credit. And it's funny, I was talking to a lady that is in this, that their bank has a product, and she was telling me that their LILOC rates was around 5.5%, currently, while their HELOC rates was at 8-9%. And I'm like, wow, that's quite a big difference. And she goes, yeah, the banks trust the life insurance more at this point as collateral. So, it's a completely different world. And by the way, I just want to say this too. When you hear, there's so much marketing out there today. And I mean, like I jokingly say, whether it's the pro life insurance or anti-life insurance crowd, you have to take a shower when you're done listening to both. Dave Ramsey talks a lot about this stuff that he doesn't like it, right? And I always say that, listen, I agree with 99% that Dave said, because that's the retail world. We're talking about how the ultra affluent uses life insurance as a tool, as a vehicle, because it's a strategy that you can implement and execute.
Yeah. And I think this is where that 3%, right? This is where the entrepreneurial journey's at, because they're in a category of, only about 3.7% of all businesses actually generate revenue over $1 million in North America, which is a crazy statistic, right?
That's crazy.
It is crazy. So, when you consider all the billion-dollar firms, right? So, okay, let's go back to the books, because we got to end here pretty soon here. And I want to talk a little bit about the best reading. I'm a Rich Dad, Poor Dad fan. I love this concept of like, hey, what you really need to focus on is the right books, right? Everybody's looking for the right information, ask the right questions. And, I'm obviously an author of my book. I spent the weekend doing a book signing for an event. And, I'm telling these athletes, don't read the book, study the book. Like, you got to go do the work. You got to go execute on it, right? Which is why I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad is so valuable, right? It keeps delivering the living word of the Bible. It just keeps delivering messages every year. And it's right there. Like, oh man, how did I not see it before? Right. So when you talk about these 10 books, give me any, let's go back and forth. Let's bounce back and forth books on this, MC. We'll lob some grenades in here. So what's your first book after Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
If you want to learn what money is, how money works, and how banks work and the global financial system works, there's a book called The Creature from Jekyll Island by Dr. G. Edward Griffin. He is fantastic. I mean, that is it's a very thick book. But
just say it's a little War and Peace right there, bro.
Yeah, but it reads pretty quickly, and I mean it's fascinating. So that's definitely one of them that I would throw out there.
Okay, good. I'm gonna throw in The Richest Man in Babylon. I always like that book. Get down to the basics, man. Like this is blocking and tackling fundamental stuff that's 3,000-4,000 years old. Because listen, we're not reinventing the wheel here. Like these are things that are just there that we need to understand, written in a very layman term that people can understand. Go.
Yes. Becoming Your Own Banker by Nelson Nash.
Okay.
So that is actually, he calls himself the discoverer of the infinite banking concept. And that's why I love Nelson. He's a great mentor, because he says, I'm the discoverer. I didn't create it. I discovered this for the average person, because again, this strategy has been going on for, 170 years. So that's also a very, very good one.
Good. I'll go with Think and Grow Rich Love the idea conceptually about what some of the other groups have done, how people were thinking about their wealth, how they created it, the difference between something that's going to have lasting value and short term. Love that book.
The Science of Getting Rich by, what is it, Walter E. Waddles? It's a pretty good
Okay.
one too. Very, very good book.
Okay, good. Love that. All right. I'll tell you one that I like. I got to think about it. I like this one. The Road Less Stupid. I love that book.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. The Road Less Stupid is written by entrepreneur, and it's very layman terms, very general, and gives them great little pockets of advice in that book, of course. And it's great. So, next one.
All right. This is a must read. The Art of the Deal.
Oh,
by
wow,
Donald
Trump. All
J.
right,
Trump.
good. Yeah.
It's one of the best books on negotiation.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you are
He's our
on
president, like
the
whatever you're going to
political
do, right?
world,
Yeah.
before he got into politics, that was a book that every single person in my network and investing world read because of the negotiation tactics that is in there. That's pretty good. So I would actually recommend that.
Yeah, I love that. This is the one thing I will say about Donald Trump. This guy, I've watched video back from the early 80s into, the Oprah event, mid 80s, and all the big talk shows in the late 80s and 90s. This guy's preached the same things, like from the word go. Like, this is what he believes, right or wrong, I'm not sure.
Yep.
But like, this is what he is at, and he stands on his ground, and he hasn't wavered.
Yep.
I think this is probably the problem where a lot of people don't like politicians. He's not a politician because he's always been the same guy. The politicians, you all go back every 15 years and go, hey, wait a minute, you said the exact opposite thing in 2005, right? And
Yep.
it's like, yeah, but that was different then. My constituents wanted something else, right? So it's like, man, he has not flip-flopped. That's for sure.
Yep.
So okay. So yeah, I love that. I was thinking about there's a book. Man, I got to think of the name here. It was written by Collins, which was Good to Great. But it's not Good to Great. It was actually a book that he wrote on operations that he talked about how to do it. It's the how to. It was a popular book in the moment. Good to Great came out later and overshadowed it, but it was the precursor that talks about the how to, right? So I love that book. And I'll come up with a name in a minute.
Yep. I would also put on the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone is a pretty good one.
Yep, that one's a good. I'm going to stay with that theme, and 10X is easier than 2X.
Oh, good one. Dan Sullivan.
Love that one. Dan Sullivan. Yeah.
A fun fact, I was a strategic coach client. So
oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So yep, I've been in Dan Sullivan's world for almost a decade. He's got really, really good stuff.
Really good stuff, man. I mean, built to last was the one I was thinking of. Built to last.
There you go. You go. I would also throw in The Go-Giver by Bob Burg in there.
Oh, Bob, The Go-Giver. Yep. Listen, I've had Bob Burg on the show. He's a personal friend. Great guy.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah.
And a Chicago guy, by the way.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Bob Burg. Nice. The Go-Giver. I love that, man. That's fabulous.
We got a lot of stuff here. We got finance, we got wealth building, we got negotiation, we got marketing, we got sales, we got everything.
Yeah, I love it, man. This is quite a little hot reading list for everybody who's out there. So I got to wrap it up. Last time, MC, how do they find you?
GetWealthyForSure.com. So if your listeners go to GetWealthyForSure.com, they can request a paperback copy of the book. Just pay for shipping and handling. There's also a link to all of our presentations on InfoBanking, case studies, and more. And then there's also a link to book a call with myself and my team to explore options for you to see where you can fine-tune efficiencies and how you can create this banking system for yourself and your family. But that's all at GetWealthyForSure.com. And if they want to check us out, producerswealth.com is the company website. But GetWealthyForSure.com is where I set everything up.
All right. I love it. For everybody else, thank you for joining us on Winners Find a Way. MC Laubscher, thank you for being here. Producers Wealth, check him out. GetWealthyForSure.com. Fabulous website. You're going to love this. I mean, obviously, MC's got literally a wealth of information, literally. And so you will have to check his stuff out for sure. Get there, do it. For everybody else, every Thursday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. Winners Find a Way show live on LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, on the Leadershipity channel, and of course, Facebook Live. And then our show drops on all the major networks, obviously audio only on all the major networks every Friday morning. So check it out. And until next time, winners find a way.